Hello and welcome to the My Endurance Hub weekly question and answer. Uh, like always, we'll give people a little chance to roll in here in case they're running a little bit late. It looks like we have a couple people joining us already, which is awesome. Sheena, nice to see you in there. Thanks for jumping on. Uh, it, it, I know Sheena from Kamloops, and so it's great to have somebody from the interior joining us. Sheena, how's the smoke out there? You probably can't answer me, but you can put it in the chat function. um, it was a great weekend if you're into triathlon. The World 70.3, the World Ironman 70.3 championships were held in Finland. And for any of you that follow the triathlon world and saw some of the pictures, it looked really neat. They had this huge swimming pool right at the base of ski jumps. So if you can think the ski jumps that they use in the Olympic Games and the Winter Olympic Games where they go really, really far and they look like they're flying through the air. Well, at the very bottom of that, one of them looked like it was active through the summer. They had like kind of artificial turf that these athletes were landing on. And then the other jumps had this huge, like, looked like a 50-meter pool right at the base of it. It was like the weirdest thing for your brain to kind of connect with. It was quite odd. Anyway, if you saw some pictures, but the racing was amazing, like it always is, on both the men's and women's side. The women's side was probably a little more predictable in terms of the favorites that ended up coming out on top. But the men's race was bizarre. I mean, I follow this sport, and I don't know if I recognized any of the names in the top 5 or 10. It was quite extraordinary. Aiden, looks like we've got Aiden here. Thanks for jumping in, Aiden. Great to see you. We'll give it another 30 seconds here before we get cracking. Just a reminder, if you're new to the question and answer, the best way to ask a question is to throw it in the chat function. So you'll see at the bottom right of your screen a little chat bubble. If you click on there, that's where I see all the questions and I answer them in the order that they come in. You can also use the raise your hand function. I say it every week. No one's ever done that. So if you do that and I miss it, it's probably because I'm not really looking there. I'm looking at the chat function. So definitely throw your questions in there. We've had some amazing questions over, gosh, this has got to be our 10th, 11th, 12th question and answer. They've been really well received. We've had great attendance and some awesome questions. Reminder that if you are looking for the old recorded versions, you can find them in the My Endurance Hub space. We record all of these and then they're available after. So, if you have, maybe you're on one of them and there was some questions answered that you think maybe some of your friends might be interested in, definitely send them that way. Chances are if you have a question, other people have the same question. Humans are more similar than we sometimes like to think. And sometimes people think, oh, I have a silly question, but it's not at all. It's a question that lots of people would have. So don't be shy. Throw your questions in there and we'll get to them. So anyway, let's jump in here. Let's get started. Aiden says, hello. Hi, Aiden. Thanks for jumping on. I'm pretty sure this is the same Aiden that's joined us quite a few times. Very, very active participant. Thank you so much for being such a regular. It's great to have you. And Sheena, I think we've got Sheena in there as well. And Sheena, if you have some questions, throw them in there for sure. I'll tell you one of the, good. Aiden's got a question here. So Aiden says, how do I avoid bonking? I've seen a few athletes bonk and it doesn't look fun. So yeah, if you're new to the language of endurance sports and you hear the word bonking and you don't know what it is, basically this is when we run out of muscle glycogen. So we have about 60 to 90 minutes of stored muscle glycogen in our bodies, which means you can go and do a run, a bike, a swim for about an hour, maybe a little bit longer. And you'll have enough carbohydrate reserves. So we use carbohydrate as fuel. You'll have enough carbohydrate reserves for about an hour, a little bit longer. If the intensity is very low, then you have, quite a bit longer. But when you run out of muscle glycogen, it's the most awful feeling. You start to get lightheaded. But the biggest thing is your body starts to get really, really hungry. And if you've ever felt this, I mean, I know I have, and most people who have been in endurance sports for a long time have as well. You'll be out on some bike ride, you'll forget to eat, it'll be 2 or 3 hours in, and all of a sudden you feel like you could just eat like anything. And I've done this a few times where I stop at a gas station or a corner store and I'm just wolfing back gummy bears and chips and like anything I can get into my body. And that is bonking. That is what we refer to as bonking. Now, just to be clear, if you live in Australia and New Zealand, bonking means something entirely different. I'll let you use your imagination. I think I threw that word around once at Ironman New Zealand. I said, I was out for a ride and I started bonking, and I got some pretty funny looks. So, okay, to address Aiden's question, how do I avoid bonking? I've seen a few athletes bonk. It doesn't look fun. So basically, when you're doing an endurance sport, you're running a deficit in terms of like using that carbohydrate that we have stored in our body. So you're using it up, and our goal is to replace it. Now, it's really hard to replace the same amount that you're using. So the longer the endurance event, often we're in this kind of weird race of like, how long can I keep going before I run out of muscle glycogen? And that's why intensity is so important. So if the intensity is a bit lower, so if you do an Ironman, for example, intensity is generally low. It might feel hard, but in the grand spectrum of intensities, it's quite low. And so we can, the amount of carbohydrate we're using, we can pretty much replace it all. So this is where sport drinks like Gatorade is the easiest example to use because everybody knows what it is, or energy gels or energy bars, or there's these little gummy bear things. Anything really with sugar in it is how we replace that. Now, not all products are created equal. At the very basic level of replacing sugar would be literally to take a teaspoon of sugar, but there's better products than that. But some people will make their own gels or their own energy drinks, and the main ingredients are, water and sodium and sugar. So when we get into the nutrition space for sport, what we're looking at here are energy drinks, energy gels, and blocks, and they have a certain amount of carbohydrate in there. They're designed to be taken generally with water, especially the gels and the blocks and the bars, because it's a fairly concentrated amount of sugar. So we need to dilute it a little bit with water. This is why energy drinks or sport drinks are so effective, because they're diluted in the water, so they're a little bit easier to absorb. But basically, that's what you're looking at is finding a nutrition product. You go to a little local running store or a local bike store, and they'll always carry some kind of nutrition product, and they can tell you more about it. But that's what you're doing. So if you go out for a 2-hour bike ride, you need to have a bottle or two on your bike, and hopefully in that bottle is some kind of sport drink. So you're covering your water and your carbohydrate and your sodium needs, and you're sipping every 5 to 10 minutes, so that at the end of that hour, you've consumed a full bottle. So any of the sweat you've lost, you're replacing. Any of the electrolyte you've lost, you're replacing. And to your question, the carbohydrate you're losing, you're also replacing. And when it's in that, pretty simple form, our bodies can grab hold of it right away, and it can get it, into the bloodstream. And we need, we need that carbohydrate to keep moving. Once you run out, it's trouble. So, yeah, bonking is not fun. It's not a nice feeling. But if you are new to this sport, I can almost guarantee with certainty at some point you will bonk. It's sort of like a rite of passage. And even some of the most experienced athletes out there, they'll bonk. They'll forget to take nutrition in, or, in the winter miles, sometimes I get a bit lazy, to be honest. Like I just wouldn't want to consume food on a 4-hour bike ride in the pouring rain. I'd just see how long I could go. And I don't recommend that. What I'm saying is that it, even when you're really experienced, it happens. So, Aiden says more like canoodling in Australia. I guess, I don't know what that means. Don't ask me what canoodling is. I won't be able to answer it, but it's a great word. I love it. Aiden says, not to stay too much on the negative, but I don't want to overtrain and have a serious health issue like rhabdo. Are there good ways to manage and avoid this? Yeah, first of all, I don't think you're being negative at all. I think there's a tendency with humans to overindulge in things that we get hooked on, and sport is certainly one of them. You know, I've always said that I think sport, vigorous exercise can be as addictive as many other things, and it's just a socially acceptable addiction often. And there's lots of chemical release that we get in our body. That make us feel good, and so there's an addictive nature to it. There's no question. And sometimes, yeah, we can overdo it. We can overtrain, and there's a little bit of a trap that we fall into where we get so tired from the training that we think we're out of shape, and so the reaction to that is that we train more, and it just drives us into the ground again. So are there good ways to manage and avoid this? Well, yeah, of course. There's lots of great ways. That's why a good training program is so important. One of the things that you have to be mindful of is being progressive. So if you're new to the sport, if you're a beginner, don't start at 20 hours of training a week. Start at like 5. Do 30 to 40 minutes a day of swim, bike, or run. And then gradually increase that training load as the body gets fitter and adapts. The other thing is it's really important to cycle the training, so you're building up some training load for a few weeks, and then you're taking a lighter week to let the body reset. And so having those training cycles are really important. Really important to listen to the body, what the body's telling you. And often if the body's telling you that it's tired, you should probably listen to that. Now, there's a fine line, because you do have to accumulate some training stress. You have to accumulate some training fatigue. You have to put pressure and stress on the body in order for the body to actually rebound and adapt. Like that's an important part of it as well. But we can sometimes push it too far. And if you push it too far, you can get into, real health issues. Probably the best example I can share for myself is that I was kind of handling 30 to 40 hour training weeks as a pro when I was at the height of my Ironman training. So 30 to 40 hours is massive. 15 to 20 of that was biking. I was managing a huge training load, but I had, it was me and my wife at the time. We had no kids, and that's all I was doing. I wasn't trying to manage another job. Like, this is what I was doing. So I would train, and then I would sleep 8 to 9 hours a night, and I would have a 2-hour nap every single day. That's the luxury I had in that time. So, I really could put stress on my body, and I was getting tons of recovery. Now, in 2008, we had our first kid, and then in 2010, we had our second. And what I can tell you is I was trying to maintain the same amount of training load with way less recovery. So as a new parent, obviously most of the burden was on my wife at the time in the early years, but certainly, things shift. There's rarely a night where you make it through, without, the kids waking up, and we probably were 2 to 4 years without making it through a full night of sleep, because they're hungry or, something's up. And so, that interrupted sleep was very difficult. And then, I'd go for a big training session, and I'd come back, and, then, my wife would need some space as well. So, and I obviously wanted to hang out with my kids. So the recovery equation became much more challenging with kids, and I ran into some real health issues for sure. In the last 2 years of my racing, I had shingles, I had mono, I had, all kinds of health issues. And in hindsight, it's easy to identify. I was just way under recovered. I was trying to manage the same training load with way less recovery. So that was tough. So yeah, managing it, really think of it as simple as possible is, we always walk a fine line of training stress, like the amount of load that we're putting on our bodies, and recovery. And if it tilts too far in the training stress department for too long, you can run into some pretty serious health issues. You have to be really careful, for sure. It's a great question. Thanks, Aiden. You're not being negative at all. Devin, great to have another person on the call here. That's awesome. Thanks, Devin. Devin says, do you recommend a certain brand or type of clothing for your apparel, like socks, underwear, shirts, shorts, hats, sunglasses? Yeah, I mean, for sure. When you get into swim, bike, run, or any endurance sport, there's going to be a whole a whole bunch of companies that are specializing in performance wear, what you should wear during. Nothing's more striking probably than cycling. If you're new to cycling and you're just out there in some baggy shorts and a t-shirt, that won't last long. If you're going to do some longer bike rides, you're going to want to invest in some good biking gear, some spandex. You got to embrace the spandex, get in there. It's, the bike gear is designed for riding. It has a nice padded chamois in the butt and crotch area. So it's more comfortable sitting on the seat. The usually very tight fitting. So it's more aerodynamic. So it's not flapping around in the wind. And there's pockets in the back so you can keep nutrition or tools or a spare tube or whatever. So, that's a good example in cycling of how, the equipment or apparel industry has really adapted and embraced, cycling specifically. Now, the same thing applies to running. The same thing applies to swimming. There's going to be brands that have dedicated, time and energy and research to making really great clothing for those particular sports. You may not, and wear whatever, but if you're going to get stuck into the sports and you want to be comfortable, comfort's probably the first and most important thing when we're considering endurance sports, because if you're uncomfortable, it's a very long time to be uncomfortable. So, a nice pair of running shorts with a light, kind of breathable t-shirt or running singlet. Oh, it just feels amazing. Socks, you mentioned socks for sure. There's the socks that we wear for cycling are a little different than what we might wear for running. A little more snug fitting and aerodynamic. And, sometimes they have logos on it to make them look cool. In the sock department for Ironman events, I used to wear double layered socks. So there were these really thin socks that had 2 layers. So when I put them on, the layers would rub against each other. And so it wasn't my skin rubbing against kind of the sock and the shoe. Really great way to avoid blisters. So there's a little innovation that the apparel industry made that helped with blisters on your feet. Really cool. Sunglasses. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like the sport sunglasses world is massive. There's so many cool companies, like Oakley's a great example. It's probably the most popular example in the sports space, the big kind of like things that, sometimes people look a little funny in them, but, there's a lot of, R&D that goes into those, for, making them wide with more peripheral vision and making them so they fit on your face and stay on your face without falling off if you're running or biking. A lot of times now with the helmets, you'll see they have like a visor. So those people aren't even wearing glasses. They're just wearing a visor that flips down. They look like a fighter pilot. That's pretty cool. But yeah, there's lots to explore. You're going to get the running stuff through the biggest apparel brands, like Nike, Adidas, Reebok. I mean, they're all in that space, been in that space for a long time. But there's lots of other really neat companies doing fun, innovative, cool stuff. A guy I used to race with, Luke McKenzie, started a company called Win Republic, and they specialize in cycling gear. And it's beautiful. It's like well designed. And his wife, Beth McKenzie, I think is probably the leader in that, in the design department. Really nice, beautiful stuff, fits really well. And it looks really cool. So, there's an example of a smaller company that's trying to grow and do cool, innovative stuff in the cycling space. So, you'll find it, you'll find it everywhere, especially when you get into it. You'll see what the pros are wearing. That's probably a good place to start. Often what the pros are wearing are at the cutting edge of what's available. So you can start there and then maybe, go try some of that stuff. Good question, Devin. Aiden says, I'm pretty busy and sometimes the only time I can get my training in is early in the morning. How can I manage to get more and better sleep? Well, yeah. So, okay. Good question, Aiden. If what you're saying is I have to start work at 8. And so the only time I can fit a workout in is 6 in the morning, and I'm forcing myself out of bed at 6 in the morning. Like maybe it doesn't fit with your natural sleep cycle. But that's the only time I have to fit it in. Yeah, that's a challenge that a ton of people have. And it's a great question. I think what you need to first of all look at is if that's the only time you can train, okay. But if you're not getting enough sleep, then you're going to walk that sort of fine line of like, the body needs sleep in order to recover properly. And if you deprive it of that for too long, you're going to run into problems, in my opinion. What I would look at first and foremost is, can you get to bed earlier? Can you kind of reset your daily clock a little bit? That would be the best option. So, maybe just getting to bed 1 hour earlier. In the first couple nights, it might be hard to fall asleep. And when you wake up, it's probably still going to feel kind of awful because your natural, sleep wake cycles in a certain place. But over time, you can retrain it a little bit. In the winter months when I'm full gas with my kids and trying to fit in workouts, I'm in bed by 8:30 or 9 and I'm up at 5 because that's when I have an opportunity to do my stuff before work. And then I have to get the kids to, their before school stuff, or they're, just getting them to school. So I managed to reset my clock somewhat successfully. So I'm still getting 8+ hours of sleep a night, which is really nice. The other thing, if you can't do that, that's super effective. And I'm going to say this, and some people might go, yeah, that's not realistic for me. But it is if you spend any amount of time on your phone or a screen in the day. We seem to justify a heck of a lot of time for that these days. But if you can get a 15 or 20-minute nap in on a daily basis, where it's somewhere dark and quiet, and you put like something over your eyes and it's just really quiet, and you get rid of your screens, this has been a game changer for me. 15 to 20-minute nap each day resets my entire body chemistry. You probably need like Andrew Huberman or somebody to tell you what exactly is going on. I don't know if I can tell you. I just know that when I pre-nap, I feel like I'm 50, which is about what I am. And post-nap, I feel like I'm 25. Like, it's unreal. And it only takes 15 or 20 minutes. I feel way more like rested and relaxed after these 15-minute daily naps than I do after a full night of sleep. So inserting something as simple as that might kind of just be enough to keep you on the right side of feeling energized. Aiden says, I love a good nap. Great idea. Yes, I'm hearing you. Maybe it's an age thing. I don't know how old Aiden is. I do know that as the years go by, those naps feel better and better. But I know too, they're a luxury for people, right? Like, if you work 9 to 5 in an office somewhere, I don't know what you're going to do, like crawl under your desk and have a nap. It might not be realistic. However, if you can create the space somewhere and get a little snooze in, it'll make a huge difference. And again, I don't think it's a time thing for most people, because if I look at my daily screen usage, there's a lot of time in there I spend doing useless stuff, and there's enough time in there for a 15-minute nap that I didn't need to be on there. It might just be a space thing, as I said, maybe you're not just like lying down, on the floor at your workspace and taking a nap. It might look kind of funny. Aiden says, how many naps until I feel 18 again? Well, based on my math, there, a 15-minute nap cut off 25 years of my life. So should only take 20 minutes. It's pretty good. Okay. Devin says, you mentioned bonking and the lingo being different in Australia for North America. Are there other terms in lingo triathletes should know not to make a fool of themselves? I don't know. That was the most striking for me, because I just remember being in New Zealand and telling somebody I was bonking, and their eyes got wide and they looked at me like, what? You were having sex on a bike ride? I don't know. I'm sure there's a few, yeah, I can't think of any offhand, but yeah, there's probably quite a few sayings. And you know what? I don't even know if that's true. I might have just made that up, like that was like a long time ago. I lived in New Zealand when I was 10 or 11 years old. I certainly didn't know the term bonking back then, so it wouldn't have been then. But I did go back for Ironman New Zealand in the early 2000s. And I was there. I was in Australia and New Zealand for several months, and I do remember using that expression at one time, but I can't remember any others that sort of stood out to me, except for actually, some of the terminology around swimsuits. I don't think I'll go there though. Okay, let's leave it there before I say something that I will regret. Devin says, are those aerodynamic bike helmets effective and worth the price? This is an awesome question. And like most of the questions that I answer, it probably can be answered in 1 minute, and I will take 30. Are the aerodynamics helmets effective and worth the price? So I think it depends on who you are. If you're brand new to the sport, you're a beginner, do not go out and buy an aerodynamic helmet. You don't need it. Certainly aerodynamics and the little tiny tweaks that we make here and there with the aero bars and helmets and wheels and everything, they make more of a difference the faster you're going. Aerodynamics is like exponential. So if you're, this is why a fighter jet is shaped the way a fighter jet is, and a semi truck that delivers, products across the country is less aerodynamic. If you're moving very, very quickly, aerodynamics is arguably more important. Now, it's still important even if you're not moving as fast. Like here's a great example. If you're riding a mountain bike in a triathlon, that's going to be a lot more work. Take the tire size and rolling resistance aside. The fact that your upper body is upright and you're catching all this wind is going to be a problem. You change that position, you get into, on a tri bike with aero bars and your hands are up front, you're tucking. You're going to move through the air a lot more easily. So that's one change you can make that is going to be way more effective than getting an aero helmet. That said, I've never seen a mountain biker wearing an aero helmet. That would be great though. So they're worth the price. If you're moving more quickly, I think. But the other thing to remember is that every aerodynamic change doesn't necessarily make you faster. I'll give you a good example. We did wind tunnel testing. So we took our bikes to an aerospace engineering place in San Diego where they had a wind tunnel, and we set our bikes up and we got in different positions. And the assumption was the lower I get in the front with my body, the faster I will go. And so we were lowering my upper body. If this is my head here, we took a spacer out, in the handlebars, and then I went down to this low and I got faster. And then I went down to this low and I got faster. And then we went one more and I got slower. The reason for that is just the way the air was moving over my body. So our assumption was get lower in the front, you'll get faster. That worked to a point, and then it didn't work anymore. So my point is aero helmets are different on different people's heads, and it often depends on how you're wearing it. So just throwing an aero helmet on your head and thinking it's faster may be a false assumption. Now, the chances are pretty good that it will make you faster, if there's less venting and it's shaped, more like a foil at the back, or however they're shaping them now. They seem to change, every year. The assumption is it's going to be quicker, but is it going to be like so dramatically faster if you're moving at like 30K an hour? If you're just sort of at the beginning parts of this sport, well, probably not. There's other places you could spend money that'll be better for you. If you are, Taylor Knibb, who just won Ironman 70.3 World Championships, should you have an aero helmet or whatever makes you faster up there? Well, yeah, probably, because they're moving so quickly, and they don't want to leave anything to chance. They want to check every single box that they can check. So, I don't know if that answered your question. What I would say is don't go out and buy an aero helmet if you're just starting. There's other places to spend money. If 5 years from now you're trying to dial in every last little bit of your triathlon bike and your position and your setup, and you've done everything you can, then yeah, go buy an aero helmet. Might make a little difference for sure. Devin leaves a question mark. Oh, that was probably just from his last question. Cool. Aiden says, I have a huge head, like an orange on a toothpick. Okay, well, Aiden, I'm not sure here if that's a question, but that's great. I mean, the first thing that jumped to mind was how big your brain must be. I mean, that's amazing. Like, I think the proportionality or the proportional size of our brains to our body is generally an indicator of how intelligent we are as an animal. And so, Aiden, congratulations. It sounds like you fit into the top percentile of, you know, genius or intellectualism. Clearly, I don't. Clearly, I have a very small head on my shoulders. Aiden says, thanks, Jasper. Great session. Yeah, Aiden, it sounds like you got to jump. That's great. Thanks for joining us, Aiden. Thanks for the great questions today. Really, really appreciate it. Hopefully you found some stuff there. Aiden says, I got to run. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, anytime. Well, not anytime. Every week, 10:30 Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, it looks like maybe we're wrapping up here. I don't see any more questions in there. I'll give it 30 more seconds here in case somebody else has a question. And if not, this has been a good session. Devin says, I got a jet too. Thanks. Yeah, Devin, you bet. Great to have you out again. Thanks for joining us. And it looks like we're wrapping up here. So thanks, everybody. Reminder that these are recorded. You can find them in the back end of the My Endurance Hub space. So if you want to review anything, or if you have a friend that wants to check out some of the question and answers, you can send them there. Really appreciate everybody spending some time with us today. And yeah, we'll wrap it up there. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week, same time, 10:30 Pacific Standard Time. Take care, everybody.